Pastor. Good afternoon. I'm just gonna give a little introduce myself. So we've been asking, are you from LA? No, we're not from LA. Which we study in LA, right? St. John Seminary, but we are priests of the Diocese of Orange. I have been ordained for almost 24 years, and been in many parishes. My first parish was St. Vincent de Paul, Huntington Beach, and then Father Ed and I went in St. Pius V, and then I went to St. Callistus, which is to the cathedral, and then I went to St. Anne's, Santana, many years there as a pastor, and now I am a Lady Fatima in San Clemente. And through my ministry, I never had the opportunity to serve the Marines because we got up north, right? I remember probably a couple of weddings for some Marines, right? Preparing Marines for weddings, but that was it. And when I get 3 years ago, I was assigned to go to Our Lady of Fatima. I noticed that was very close to Camp Pendleton. Even you can hear them. You can hear them. And I noticed also that in our Sunday Masses there were coming Marines. Mostly 9 a.m., 11 a.m., and 7 p.m. coming to our Masses. And you can see their Marines right away. They don't have to introduce themselves. And as well, they were very faithful to come to the Sacrament of Reconciliation. I had a lot of the Marines coming for the Sacrament of Reconciliation. And some of them came to us also as a counseling. We would like to talk to Father, or receive sacraments, Eucharist, confirmation, or we have been preparing as well for marriage. We also have some militaries, they are married, and they have the children. We have a Catholic school, so the children come to our school. And also we are members of the Knights of Columbus, and they were coming to our meetings. So we had the opportunity to interact with them, to talk to them, to work with them, and it was been very wonderful experience, being there for them and try to help them out with the struggles they have in life like any of us, right? And searching to be holier and looking to be better Christian, very Catholic. But later on, they approached to us, Father Ed and I, and after the Knights of Columbus, there is a need in Camp Pendleton. There are some Marines that cannot go out for a year around, right? Well, Father will give us those details. Let's just get over it all. And they were asking us, can you help us out? Can you extend your ministry to Camp Pendleton? And Father and I were talking, and I said, why not? Let's do it. So, but it's a process, okay? Don't think it's just gonna be called, hey, when are we down there to celebrate Mass? No. It takes a lot of time and effort. There's a lot of procedure to go. So now Father Ed's gonna take over, and he's gonna explain what I have to go through in order for us to do ministry at Camp Pendleton. Thank you, Father.
So first of all, I know a lot of you stood and are veterans. Are any of you Marine veterans? Any Marine veterans? All right, so I'll have to watch thank you very much. I'll have to watch what I say about the Marines then. No, I'm gonna be honest. I was surprised that you all raised your hands rather than go ooh ah, or is that too long past? So anyway. So, as Father Antonio was sharing, at Our Lady of Fatima, we are very close to Camp Pendleton. I actually looked it up on Google Maps this morning just to make sure I had my geography right. Fatima is Our Lady of Fatima Church is a 10-minute drive to the northernmost Camp Pendleton gate. So we're a 10-minute drive. it's only about 2 miles as the crow flies. So naturally, we have a lot of Marines coming off of Camp Pendleton to Mass every week. A lot of Marines also live in San Clemente. And as I've moved, I've now been at Our Lady of Fatima in San Clemente for about 1.5 years now. And part of my learning process about the community was to come to realize that a lot of Marines live in San Clemente, there's not enough housing for them, or they're married, or whatever, that they're living in San Clemente. And so naturally, those Marines and their families are going to come to Our Lady of Fatima. There are other churches, St. Edward's and Holy Trinity and others, that aren't too far away, the mission, but we're definitely the closest. I think part of it too is that there is a real support at Our Lady of Fatima amongst parishioners for our Marines. Let me repeat that. There's support amongst Our Lady of Fatima parishioners for our Marines. I needed to change that because our Marines are our parishioners too. It's not that our longtime parishioners who've lived there for 30 years or 50 years or whatever are our parishioners, and the Marines who are very migrant. They come and go, and that's one of the, it's one of the sad parts of ministering to the Marines is we get to say hello, but very quickly we have to say goodbye to them because they come and go, and if we're there long enough, they do literally go and come back. So, but they are our parishioners, and there is a spirit amongst all of our parishioners, our longtime parishioners, that these Marines are our parishioners, even though they rarely register. They're not with us that long. Usually, the longest is a few years. But a lot of support from our longtime parishioners. Many of our longtime parishioners are themselves discharged Marines who were stationed at Camp Pendleton at one time or another and then settled in San Clemente. So we have a large Marine population in San Clemente, so it makes sense that there's a lot of support in the parish for the ministry. As Father Antonio shared, we were in discussions last summer with some of the Marines because Father Antonio and I had talked. We would really like to hear from the Marines what we can do to serve them better. And so we started to have conversations. Our goal still is, actually, we're still working on this even after over a year, is to actually get some kind of informal structure in place where we can get Marines together once in a while and have conversation with them, find out what's happening, how things are going. Again, what can we as a parish community do to serve the Marines better? But haven't gotten that set up yet because one of the things we've learned is how crazy the Marine schedule is. The Marines on Camp Pendleton are working very, very hard. Their schedules are crazy. They find out about different assignments, different training. They go into the field. Camp Pendleton, as you probably know, is a huge area and a lot of wilderness area. It's one of the main areas where Marines are trained for combat in desert conditions in the military, and so they're out in the field training a lot, and those assignments come up very suddenly. The Marine scheduling, they keep the people limber and flexible. The Marines, they keep them limber and flexible, and so every time we've tried to schedule something, some kind of meeting, it's been canceled because we find out shortly before, they're going to be in the field or they're being transferred. Sometimes they're being deployed. But we've been having a lot of informal discussions as we could. And as Father Antonio said, one of the things that kept coming up, and I think this was telling, because we're trying to have this conversation with these guys these Marines, what can we do to serve you better? And their first thought was, and I'll circle back to this later on, but their first thought was not about themselves, what would serve them better. Their first thought was for the Marines that were going through what's called the School of Infantry-West. So what is the School of Infantry-West, and why is that a particular ministry? And that is the ministry that Father Antonio and now a growing number of parishioners from Our Lady of Fatima have been taking part in. So to explain a little bit about SOI West, School of Infantry-West, SOI West, is the Marine jargon. Almost all Marines at SOI West are straight out of basic training at the Marine Corps Recruit Depot in San Diego, and that's MCRD. So MCRD is Marine Corps Recruit Depot, and that's where basic training, most of the recruits, Marine recruits from the western part of the United States go to MCRD in San Diego for their basic training. And as I had one of the Marines describe it to me, that's mostly physical and mental training. That's what basic training is, mostly physical and mental training. Then immediately after MCRD, after they become Marines, coming out of MCRD in San Diego in our part, almost all of those Marines come to School of Infantry, SOI West, which is where Father Antonio and I are doing the ministry. And the training at SOI West, whereas basic training, MCRD training is physical and mental training. When they get to SOI West, it's mostly technical training. They're learning how to use different kinds of weapons. They're learning, they're starting to do more, they do a lot of field training. So they're doing a lot of that kind of training in SOI West. And that all of that goes into what Father Antonio and some of our parishioners are doing and why we're doing it the way we do. Most of the Marine recruits from the eastern part of the United States go through basic training at MCRD Parish Island, South Carolina. So that's just so you know that we're covering the west side. So SOI West, the reason why so many of our Marines were in the parish that we were talking to, and including at the time Father Samuel Schneider, who is a Navy chaplain, but all of your chaplains to the Marines come from the Navy. It's kind of like the Navy corpsmen, that there are no Marine chaplains, there are no Marine chaplains, period. All the chaplains serving the Marines are Navy chaplains. And so Father Samuel Schneider is a Navy chaplain who was with us last summer, and we were in some discussion with him, but he's one of those that we were in discussion with, and then he was gone. We were actually hoping that he was wanting to get involved doing masses at Our Lady of Fatima once in a while, and I think he came one time because that's all we were able to schedule him, and suddenly he's deployed elsewhere. He's now in Africa. So that's another thing, working with the Marines is, I had a parishioner not too long ago say, all the Marines they're just in training. I'm like, no, actually, we know that they get deployed all around the world. They get deployed to Africa, they get deployed to the Pacific theater. It's all about China. So things that you learn just from working with Marines and where they're going. But Father Samuel, though, talking about the Catholic spiritual needs of the Marines on Camp Pendleton, as we had discussion with him and some of the Marines, they agreed that for the most part, where Marines had their own vehicles, had permanent assignments on Camp Pendleton, the vast majority of them had their own transportation, and the best thing for them to be served, to receive Catholic ministry, was to get off base, come to Our Lady of Fatima, where they are so very welcome, and the Marines talk about that they experience welcome there. So we know they do, and they know they're welcome there, and that's they get out of their Marine uniforms, they get into a normal setting, and at Our Lady of Fatima they have all kinds of grandmas and grandpas who just want to embrace them and love them and support them, and so really that's the best thing, that to do Mass, for us to serve the Marines on Camp Pendleton, what was needed was not for Father Antonio and I to come onto Camp Pendleton and do Mass anywhere on Camp Pendleton except at SOI. But otherwise, just to be a welcoming presence for them at Our Lady of Fatima, which they do receive. But at SOI West, like I said, because they're coming directly out of MCRD, they're coming directly out of basic training. They're not allowed to have their own vehicles in basic training at MCRD, nor are they allowed to have their own vehicles at SOI West. And they do have limited public transportation options, but very limited. It's very difficult for them to get off base from SOI West. So for the most part, the Marines in SOI West, going through SOI West, and just to finish out what SOI West is, most of those Marines coming out of basic training into SOI West, they'll be at SOI West for about 2 months. And I get different stories on that, but it's about 2 months. There are Marines coming from other places, more senior Marines who go through different kinds of training, also offered at SOI West, but most of them they have their own vehicles. They come over to Our Lady of Fatima for Mass. They don't come over to SOI West unless they're volunteering to help out with the Mass there. But that therein was the issue, that for all of the Marines, the vast majority of Marines on Camp Pendleton, they can get in their cars or their pickup trucks, mostly actually, get into their pickup trucks and get to Mass. If they're in North Pendleton, they can come to Our Lady of Fatima, and that's really the best for them, where we can serve them the best. But for the Marines, most of the Marines at SOI West, they cannot leave base, and if they're going to do any kind of religious service on Sunday, they've got to go to a religious service offered there. So Father Samuel, one of the last things he did before he headed to Africa was to put me in touch with the head chaplain at SOI West. And I can tell you, I grew up in rural Missouri and was around a lot of Missouri Synod Lutherans, and there weren't in that day there weren't terribly friendly relations between the Missouri Synod Lutherans and the Catholics. Chaplain Hamer, the head chaplain at SOI West, is a Missouri Synod Lutheran. He's the nicest Missouri Synod Lutheran I've ever met, I have to tell you. But it is, and then we have a new deputy chaplain at SOI West, Chaplain T. He's Pacific Islander. His last name begins with T, and I can't pronounce it. It has like 15 letters, so we just call him Chaplain T. Very thankfully. He's a Methodist. But again, both from an ecumenical perspective, both Chaplain Hamer and Chaplain T have been very welcoming and supportive of us because they knew how many Catholic Marines there were, and Catholic Marines coming to their Protestant service every week, and when they knew that they would rather be going to a Catholic service. So one of the things, when Father Samuel did the referral, it was Chaplain Hamer, Brian Hamer, that I was talking to the most. And they didn't have to convince Father Antonio and myself, but that we needed Catholic presence on there. But one of the things that they kept emphasizing was, and I used to be in charge of ecumenical and interreligious relations for the for the Diocese of Orange. So I have a very ecumenical viewpoint of other Christian denominations, but I am also defensive of our Catholic tradition. And so Chaplain Hamer knew what he was doing when he kept telling me, yeah, you know, the evangelical Christians have a very active ministry here, and a lot of the Marines are going there, and I think a lot of your Catholics are going with them. And then also that the Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, have a very active ministry. And I love the Latter-day Saints. I love I love some of the evangelical Christians. I love the Latter-day Saints. They're one of my favorite religious groups, but they are very effective recruiters. And so when I was told that the evangelical Christians and the Latter-day Saints had a very active ministry on Camp Pendleton, I ran to Father Antonio and told him, and we both had the same reaction, oh my gosh, we have got to get in there. And so that started the process. Now, before I went into the seminary, I was an attorney, and one of the things I did in my years as an attorney was government contracts law. So I won't bore you with all the details. I'm having this whole process has given me PTSD from my government contracts days because it has involved marrying up the bureaucracies of the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Marines, in the military in general, the bureaucracy of the Archdiocese for the Military Services, which I will talk about in a few minutes, and the Diocese of Orange. And I'll say, everybody here has been working together very well, but there are bureaucracies, there are processes and procedures to work through, and we're working through that. The part of this, and part of it is just working through all of those bureaucratic necessities. But part of it is that the history of Mass at SOI West, there was up until COVID a Mass being offered every week at SOI West. But then when COVID happened and everything was shut down, that was one of the things that was shut down. And so then after COVID, that Catholic Mass they weren't ever able to get it started back up again. And Chaplain Hamer, shared some of his efforts in trying, and Father Samuel Schneider, they all worked to try to get a Catholic Mass started back up and running, and were not able to do so for various reasons. They ran into to various issues, which was one reason when Father Antonio and I came forward and said, hey, we would like to help. It was like, well, we were welcomed with open arms, no problem there. But one of we've been doing Mass there for about a month, 6 weeks actually now. This will be, I think, this Sunday will be our 6th week. Almost the entire time we've been doing Mass now has been a government shutdown. And so that really has impacted a lot going on. And so that's a process that we're working through. But then there are other processes that we will, but we're also learning about the schedule for the Marines at SOI West, and what works out. But we're having very good conversations about that. Chaplain Hamer and Chaplain T continue to be very supportive. It just so happens that the commanding officer at SOI West, Colonel Patrick Byrne, is a Catholic and comes to our SOI West Mass every Sunday. And so we've been able to have some direct conversations with him about certain things, and he's very supportive. But there was such a long time that there was not a Catholic presence there at SOI West that we're having to build up. So the first week I was there for Mass, we had 10. The next week we had 20. Then we had 30. And then one week, Father Antonio had 80. Now last week when I was there, we were back down to 30, but I was told that because that one unit had brought so many was probably out in the field, and so we're learning, but we're also learning about the schedule, and part of that is about our own, being team players, and finding out, well, why is it that our numbers fluctuate so much? And we've been told that it's because some of the instructors are slow to let their Marines out. They won't let them out of training to come to Mass. And the first instinct of some might be to protest about that, file a civil rights lawsuit. That's the lawyer in me. File a civil rights lawsuit. That they're being denied their civil rights. But I think the better approach is the approach that I'm using, frankly. So of course I think it's better because it's the approach I want to use. Is to ask, well, why are those instructors doing that, and why do the Marines cooperate with it, and to find out that at SOI West, the Marines, because it's technical training, they are Marines. They become Marines as they come out of basic, but they aren't necessarily in it for the long haul if they don't measure up to certain technical requirements. And so the Marines at SOI West are under a lot of pressure to learn and to build their skills. The instructors are under a lot of pressure that their students learn and build up their skills. And so I'm remembering back when I was in law school at exam time about when pressure was really on, and I never skipped Mass. I always thought it would be a stupid thing to skip Mass during exam period when you need God the most when you're in law school. But yeah, the temptation is there. You can imagine the temptation where a Marine would be like, maybe I don't want to go to Mass this week and I can get a little extra training time to work on this issue. So one of the things, to understand that, to understand the instructors and the Marines, where they're coming from, is very important. So Father Antonio and I are committed. We offer, we think, very worshipful, prayerful celebrations of the Eucharist, but we don't keep the Marines forever. We need to get them out and get them back into training and build up a reputation amongst the instructors and the Marines themselves, that they can put God in the Lord's Day, but that we're not going to demand so much out of them that their progress as Marines will go by the wayside. So there are two main reasons why I love working with the Marines. Reason number one: Marines are never boring. They're always fun to work with. And especially the Marines that we're working with at SOI West, remember, they're right out of basic training. They're young. And I always say, even though they haven't done much of their technical warrior training yet, they're in the process at SOI West. I always say these are men. And we have mostly men on the West Coast, as it turns out. Most of the women Marines go to the East Coast. So these are men. They are already trained warriors, and they're getting even more training as warriors. I wouldn't want to get into a fight with any of them, but essentially they are boys away from home for the first time. And we, Father Antonio and I need to provide Catholic spiritual ministry to them, but it's not just about sacraments and prayer and spirituality. In some ways, for example, it's easy if they've sinned, if they've messed up and sinned, we can absolve them in the confessional. That's the easy part. The more difficult part is, whether we're in the confessional or whether we're in giving some counseling to them, is as we hear their stories and we hear how, as boys away from home for the first time, they've really made a mess of their lives. They've really gotten themselves into a pickle. And so part of our job is to help them to realize you've gotten yourself into a little pickle and you need to get out of this. I've had a lot of conversations with officers through this time, and I've said to them, you officers really ought to appreciate what all of us doing chaplaincy are doing, because we're helping your Marines with issues that if we weren't helping them deal with it, you would have to deal with it. And the officers say, oh yeah, we know that. We know that because yes, when we have those issues come up, the first thing we say is, would you like to go see a chaplain? And if they say, no, I'm not religious, then yes, we have to deal with it. And it's not these are issues the officers don't want to have to deal with. So, but it's a really gratifying ministry that we're able to provide that help to the Marines. Number two reason why I really love working with the Marines is that the Marines, and again, these are Marines straight out of basic in SOI West, so especially these Marines, they do exactly what you tell them to do, and they don't do anything unless you tell them to do it. So at Mass, and it's getting better, but at first celebrating Mass, even Marines we knew were very churched and knew how to go to Catholic Mass. We had to say, please stand, please sit. We had to, because they wouldn't do anything unless they were told what to do, because of course that's what they were trained in basic. In basic, they were trained. They had it drilled into them, no pun intended, by drill sergeants. You only do what you're told to do, and you don't do anything that you're not told to do. So now, this last Sunday, that I noticed they most of them were standing and doing the things they were supposed to do when they were without being asked. But it did take me looking at them, so I think even there was a little communication. So yeah, it's kind of a power trip, to be honest, that these young guys, they do only what you tell them to do, and they don't do anything that you don't tell them to do. And with all due respect, that's just not something we priests experience with you regular parishioners, So it is a power trip to have it with the Marines. But I coming back to Father Antonio's and my desire to communicate with the Marines about what are your needs, could we serve you better. It is this cultural aspect of Marines, I think in particular. I think it's in all the military to some extent, but I think especially in the Marines, it's an obstacle to having conversation. It's why when we asked the Marines a year ago, what can we do for you, they didn't talk about what we could do for them. They talked about what we could do for their brothers coming through SOI West. And so, the Marines just aren't used to being asked, what do you need or what do you want? Now, I've had great conversations. I love them. Here's where I'm going to make a little fun of the Marines. So, but not really fun. The Marines are very proud, and so one of the things that they're proud of, they've communicated on a regular basis, is that they are they get the least resources of all the military services. They get the worst weaponry. They get the second-hand weaponry from some of the military services. They don't get the appropriations. They don't get the resources. And Marines, they just take what they're given and work with what they have, and they're still the best warriors in the world. So that's the Marine culture, but they're not used to, now I think they might admit that the Navy SEALs and the Army Rangers might be their equals, but that's probably about it for the Marines. That's that Marine pride. But it is a part of their culture that they have a hard time talking about what they need, because it's like we don't it's not our job to identify what we need or what we want. It's our job to take whatever is given to us and make the best of it. So that'll continue to be a bit of an obstacle, but it's one we're willing to hang in there with and having a lot of fun doing it, actually. I want to finally give a little plug for the second collection that's coming up for the Archdiocese for the Military Services. We have been, as I indicated earlier, Father Antonio and I, we have been working through the military archdiocese. The Archdiocese for the Military Services has the jurisdiction over all of the United States Armed Forces, including active duty military, their spouses and dependents, and also has our jurisdiction over all VA medical centers and some federal employees serving abroad. So it was formed, the Archdiocese of the Military Services was created by Pope St. John Paul II in 1985. And so when Father Antonio and I are on Camp Pendleton, we were in the territory of the Diocese of San Diego. We're outside of the Diocese of Orange at that point. It's the Diocese of San Diego territory, but we are under the jurisdiction of the Archbishop of the Military Services, who's currently Archbishop Timothy Broglio, who also happens to be the current president of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And so Father Antonio and I have what are called faculties in the Catholic Church, permission or authorization to celebrate sacraments and exercise priestly ministry. We have faculties from the Archdiocese for the Military Services. That's who, and when there are questions that come up about Marines who want to become Catholic or Marines who want to complete sacraments or any of those kinds of things. When we're on Camp Pendleton, we call the chancellor actually for the military archdiocese to get instructions. Where Marines come to us at Our Lady of Fatima, then we're operating as priests of the Diocese of Orange, and we're under the jurisdiction of the Diocese of Orange. So Father Antonio and I are constantly having to think, okay, where am I? Who's my boss right now? To get the right answers. The Archdiocese for the Military Services, to be clear, it does not pay the salaries of military chaplains, Catholic priests, chaplains. That's paid by the military, by the U.S. government, by the Department of Defense. So that's not what our second collection goes for. But all Catholic services in the military services, like I said, are under the jurisdiction of the military archdiocese, and there are certain things that are very important. Father Antonio and I have had a very good experience with the military archdiocese and are very supportive of it. And so I ask for you to be supportive of it, because they do depend upon the second collection that's taken up every 3 years, and this year is the year is the year now, and it's taken up around Veterans Day, and that will be taken up in our parishes this weekend or the following weekend, but very, very soon now. And yes, the money that we contribute is very important to providing Catholic ministry to our active duty military and their dependents. And Father Antonio and I are able to do our job, what we're doing for the Marines at SOI West, because of our support and authorization, but yes, support as well from the military archdiocese. So please do be as generous as you can. And so, yeah, I could go on, but why don't we take some questions if there are any? Questions for myself or Father Antonio?
So there's actually a church building in Camp Pendleton?
That's a very good question. Is there actually a church building in Camp Pendleton? There is. There are a lot of chapels in Camp Pendleton, actually, in the different, so SOI West does have its own chapel. It's called the Caruso Chapel, so I'm donated by Rick Caruso back when. We do our masses in an auditorium not too far from there. We have mass at 9 a.m. The Protestants have services in the chapel. The chapel is very small, and it's really run down. The auditorium is more a project. It's very run down. It needs a lot of work, but that's really the case with all of Camp Pendleton. Camp Pendleton, and yes, this is, see, I've drunk the Marine Kool-Aid. It's because the Marines never get enough money for anything, and all the money for really nice facilities go to all the other military services. That's what the Marines told me to say. So they didn't tell me to say that, but that's what they would tell me to say. But no, it's really run down. It's small, so we're already, I mean, definitely, I don't think we could have fit 80 folks in the chapel, and we expect to grow because a lot of the Marines are Latinos, and a lot of Latinos are Catholics. So in fact, last Sunday after Mass, one of the young Latino Marines came up to me and said, "Can I take your picture? Can we take a picture with you, Father? My mom will be thrilled that I came to Mass." So anyway, so that the chapel is small, it's run down, but it is there, and there are a lot of chapels throughout Camp Pendleton. If you drive through Camp Pendleton, you see a lot of buildings with crosses on them.
So because each week you're not certain about the number of people that are able to join, how do you manage the Eucharist, consecration, posts?
We've been doing a communion count, and it's been working. And in fact, I doubted our head sacristan. Our parish head sacristan is a former civilian Navy nurse, a retired civilian Navy nurse, is married to a retired Marine drill sergeant, and so she knows the military well. And I doubted her though that last Sunday because she took a communion count, and we started communion, and I'm looking in my ciborium, and I'm like, I just don't think there are enough here, so I start to break, and she was spot on. So far it's been working. Honestly, as the numbers grow, that may be harder. And you know, it's thank you for the question. It's a good question. We don't have a tabernacle there, so it's not like we can consecrate a few extra and put the extra in a tabernacle. So what we've been doing is we have a little left over, a little Jesus left over, and I just consume the rest of Jesus after communion, and we go from there. But it's part of the inconvenience of celebrating Mass on a regular basis outside of your regular space. I also want to point out one of those funny moments for me as in this process. I don't know whether Father Antonio, I think I talked to you about it, because so when you walk into the auditorium where we celebrate Mass, on the wall are where the Stations of the Cross would be in a church, in a Catholic church. There's artwork of Marines in different combat situations, all of them shooting a gun in certain combat situations. And the first week we were in there, and I'm looking, it's like, I am not in Kansas anymore. You know, this is a. But you know, I was actually able to use it because in one of my homilies a few weeks ago, I felt like I needed to speak specifically to the Marine situation. It was the theme of the gospel, and what I was preaching, you know, back in the parish. I felt I needed to to apply that to their particular situation. And I was very thankful that Colonel Byrne, the CO for SOI West, was there. That I said to him, okay, I'm about to say something, and I want to be a team player and in sync with the Marine Corps on this. But so I'm going to say something, and if you need to correct it or we need to make a corrective, I'll be asking. So I gave the little spiel about a paragraph worth of stuff, and then I turned to Colonel Byrne and said, okay, is that okay? And he gave me a thumbs up. So I was like, okay, good. I don't want to be put in the brig for something I said in my homily. But I was actually able to use one of those. Part of what I was preaching about was to the Marines that they, the message was, don't act out of hate. You know, the part of the message of the gospel was act out of love, don't act out of hate. And so my message to the Marines was, I'll tell you exactly what it was. I said, I know in your position that it sometimes might be tempting, that hate may make it easier for you to pull the trigger sometimes, but hate also, I think, will make it easier for you to step over the line and commit war crimes. And we want to appreciate you and support you in your mission, not prosecute you for war crimes. And so anyway, that yes, even act out of love for your country, act out of love for people around the world, act out of love for the love, joy, and peace and justice of Jesus Christ that we want for all the world. Don't act out of hate. So it's at that point I looked at Colonel Byrne and I said, is that okay? And he gave me the thumbs up. So, but one of the things using those, I used that artwork around the auditorium. I said, note that in all of this artwork, none of those Marines have looks of hate on their faces. They have looks of professionalism. They are professional Marines with a mission to do what's right in that moment, and they're doing that. They're not acting out of hate. They're not acting out of malice. They're acting with complete professionalism, and that's what the Catholic Church wants you to be doing as Marines. And so I was actually able to use those unique stations of the cross in that circumstance.
We're lucky enough in our diocese, besides having you guys, of course, having three that come to mind right away that are former military chaplains, plus the late great beloved Father Sarah. You guys have probably been able to tap into the experiences in your experiences.
Not yet, but we will. Yes, this is so new. Yeah, but yeah, we're hoping for some opportunity to connect. You know, the other thing is, and I will definitely, we're going to be able to learn from their experience. But the fact is, it's a changing world, and I have had this conversation with some of our parishioners who were in the military, who were in the Marines some years ago, and they're sharing their experiences, and they're trying to tell Father Antonio and I, you know, what we need to do and how we need to do it. And sometimes I have to say, you know what? It's a different world now. The reality that you served in is utterly different. I mean, I'm happy to hear what your reality was, but the fact is, it's totally different. The other thing is, and Father Antonio and I were actually talking about this on the way up, that there's so much movement in the military that none of the people we're working with know who any of those priests are. You know, Father John Shimatsu, Father Kevin Sweeney. You know, they have no idea who they are, because that's even though that's not that many years ago. For those of us who are a little older, it doesn't seem like that many years ago. For you young guys, it's a lifetime ago, but that's a different story. But nevertheless, it's not been that long, but also there's just been so much change.
You're probably aware, but I don't know how many would be aware, is Doug Collins, who is Secretary of Veterans Affairs, was a former, well, he was a Baptist minister. He was a former chaplain in the Navy. And when he got off active duty, because of complications with his parishes and stuff, he transferred to the Air Force. And my adopted nephew, Father Hayden Maverick, oriented into the Air Force. But Doug, who's in charge, is probably what I believe is already the best secretary of veteran affairs, because he's compassionate. He knows what the Navy is like. He knows what the Air Force is like. He's been in Iraq. He's been all over the place. He's compassionate, hardworking, and he doesn't take you-know-what from anybody. So I just thought, he's wonderful. So I'd like to go with that.
Well, and thank you for sharing that. And it actually, let me speak as well to, I think one of the changes that needs to happen in our chaplaincy for the military is that we need to go from a sense that the chaplaincy generally is going to be done by active duty chaplains in the military, and instead some help provided. And in the case of SOI West, for example, there's no need for there to be an active duty military chaplain, Catholic priest chaplain assigned to SOI West when we can do that. And it's an easy ministry to extend from Our Lady of Fatima and make that a part of our parish ministry. Where our military, we have fewer and fewer military chaplains, and especially amongst Catholic priests, and where they're really needed is not in these places where nearby Catholic parishes can serve them, but serving in the units themselves and deployed with the units. And that's something, Father Antonio at one time was in better physical shape, but wouldn't be able to do that. I've never been in the physical shape to be able to operate as a military chaplain. And so, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs is a former chaplain. He was in the trenches, and really to appreciate our military chaplains, our active duty military chaplains, that they're not just sitting in a church office and vesting and celebrating Mass occasionally. They're in the middle of battle. One Marine was telling me the story of it was actually Father Samuel. He was telling the story. Father Samuel, when I think it was either in Iraq or Afghanistan, but had baptized a whole bunch of troops because they were going into battle. Missiles were actually flying overhead, and the chaplain baptized them, confirmed them, I guess gave them First Eucharist, and sent them into battle. So those aren't cush positions. Is this the time? Or one quick question?
No, that's Glenn. He doesn't do quick questions.
I do know one military person that former sergeant. No, you mentioned PTSD, so that must be Greece trauma. What can we, basically, what do we do to help process the beauty of what you've done with the Navy is get the word out. There's a lot of other military installations in Southern California. And your experience can be very helpful because it is a changing world. A lot of these boys have fatherless homes, and they really are in need of good counsel. And with your unique, is there something specific that you consider?
Well, donate to the military archdiocese. Your money, it's not only the money, but it also, the more money that's contributed to the military archdiocese, the more that everybody sees how important this is to you. So put your money where your mouth is. That's a good way to express. And just to know at this point, and Father Antonio and I were talking about this on the way up as well, about that we have the support of our parish, but we need to continue to communicate in our parish to keep that support. That when, and I have heard of experiences in different parishes, other parishes around the country, where a priest is either a reserve chaplain and is gone for some period of time, or a National Guard chaplain, and the people gripe and complain, and I'd like to use another word, but I won't, but they gripe and complain about their priests being gone and are all entitled about it. And you know what? That's not it's not patriotic. It's not Christian. It's not patriotic. And don't. I would dare any of those people to tell me that they have any support for the military, because when it comes right down, when push comes to shove, they don't. You're getting it's afternoon. It's my nap time, and so you get the grumpier. Maybe it's time to get rid of the microphone before I get really grumpy. So. But I think continue to be supportive and talk about it. Because I think in time, I do think I think that we might be a part of helping some folks in the military, for that matter, in the church structure, to think outside the box. That again, back to what I was talking about. The active duty, the younger active duty military chaplains need to be limber. They need to be going, they need to be deploying. They need to be going with their troops. Father Antonio and I can't do that. We can't march up a mountain or even up a hill at this point. So, but we can go celebrate Mass at SOI West. So free up those military chaplains to go into battle. Or at least to train for battle, and we older parish priests can waddle into the military bases and provide chaplaincy there, and I think that there are. I'm guessing that especially military installations around the country, there's probably a lot of Catholic chaplaincy that can be provided in the same way that Father Antonio and I are providing it.
Last question for Ron, real quick.
So it's not a question, it's more information and a possible way to give back. The YMCA of Camp Pendleton has a program called a Home Hospitality Program, where my wife and I, for 10 years, you go down for Thanksgiving, you adopt Marines, bring them home to your Thanksgiving dinner, and it's amazing. Some of these kids, first time on a plane, outside their, whatever. Anyways, the program is still going on. Go onto the website, YMCA.
Or see you afterwards?
What's that?
Or see you afterwards?
See me afterwards.
Yes, I really encourage that, yeah.
It is beautiful. It is beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, I'd like to give these trophies and appreciation for you making that trip over here, Father Antonio and Father Ed Becker. Let's
Thank
hear
you
it for
so much.
everybody.